Two, one, go. Good morning, Anna. It's really great you could make it today, and looking forward to talking with you a little bit about your executive presentations and your strategy and how you communicate to your organization.
Thank you very much, Eric. Pleasure to be here, and yeah, I look forward to discussion.
Awesome. So we prepared some questions in advance just so that we can, get to it. And I mean, first question is this. Companies everywhere, worldwide, they're in constant shift. They're shifting strategies, they're shifting locations. I mean, what is it? I mean, how do you communicate this to the people that they're just showing up to work and looking to do their job?
Hmm. Oh yeah, well, that's one of those really tricky questions, right? Because as we all know, communication around change or transformation is something one really can't get right for everyone. And I've seen actually both ends of the spectrum in my career. So from being totally transparent with employees from day one that, we know as leaders that there's going to be some change, and even involving them in the decision making,
Mm-hmm.
to being highly controlled with the target audience and the messaging, and more or less not allowing the leaders in the group that are knowing about the change to communicate anything to employees. So seeing both ends of those has been quite interesting, actually.
Mm-hmm. So it really does just depend on the individual situation as to which extreme you're
Yes.
going to go with. What is your personal communication strategy? So, everyone has their own way that they're presenting. We covered that in my class that, you have to find what works for you. What works for you, Anna?
Yeah. Well, my one key word would be honesty. Now,
Okay.
honesty doesn't mean transparency, right? Because
Uh,
during change and transformation, sometimes the details of the change to come are not well planned, or we don't have all the information, or would only create concern to employees if they're communicated too early on. However, if we're always honest in our dialogues, even if this means saying, I'm afraid I can't share the detail about that with you yet, then we create a space for dialogue. The most important form of communication during change is listening, and
mm-hmm.
using our active listening skills to understand what someone's underlying concerns are at that moment, and what you can do to support them, builds trust and builds an honest relationship. So an example I had was when one of our change programs at Swarovski was communicated, one of my peers actually suddenly became over concerned, and I wasn't quite sure why, because there was no personal impact communicated to her at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we had a few discussions, and I really tried to listen, even though I knew more than her about the change coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out it was something like she needed to renew her mortgage, and she was getting quite nervous about that because she didn't know what her future would be like. So we talked about what scenarios there could be and how she could make herself more comfortable. And I think often with employees, there's an underlying concern. And if leaders can get in touch with that and have those dialogues with their employees, that can be very helpful.
Great. And what's, for example, in active listening, what would be two or a couple of tips you could give to our listeners, how they could appear to be more, how they can be more active in their listening?
Yeah, well, I think in general, when we're in discussions around change, we as leaders feel that we need to have the answers. So
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about active listening in change, then, it's important that we don't need to jump in and have the answers. It's fine to just acknowledge the person's concerns and what they're talking about, with the normal, yeah, understand, the thank yous and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, once we've understood their concern, to use active listening by reconfirming back to them. So, okay, so Leah, I hear that you're feeling upset about this and this message. And let's talk about now how you can, go forward with that, and how you're going to live holding that message now, and what you're going to do with it. So, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing.
And is there any, for example, advice or strategy you could give when you have to communicate this broadly, perhaps to a group of people where you may not be able to have an individual discussion
Yes.
or? Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's again goes back to what you mentioned at the beginning. It depends a bit on the type of change, right? The drivers of transformation, the impact of the change, and also the timing and the phasing of change. So when you've got a bigger group, if the change is going to take years, it's of course a very difficult challenge to communicate.
Mm.
What works well during early phases of communication is to clearly categorize the target groups that require different messaging. So that means that one has to prepare different platforms and events for communicating change. And at the same time, because there's going to be different platforms and events and different employee groups, you need to offer managers training for challenging conversations. Because after those communication events, employees often reach out to their managers and want to know more, and managers need to be ready to handle those discussions. One thing I think that doesn't work when it comes to group communication and some approaches afterwards is a leader or a manager joining in any negative dialogue about the change. I mean, it's quite normal that there's going to be some messages which people don't like, and employees will approach you and they'll tell you what's wrong about it and what they don't like and what they're concerned about. And again, goes back to, it's important to listen but not to agree, because everything you comment on about the change will be taken by its word, because people are much more sensitive during times of change.
Okay. And although that all sounds good, that makes sense, and it's something to think about. That definitely when the leadership is participating in the complaining, that no one's going to move forward in a positive direction.
Yeah.
Yep. In general, process changes are unglamorous. What do you do about that? What can be done about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's on my mind at the moment, actually, because, so many companies are driving efficiency transformations and adapting their business models and seeking to standardize processes to spotlight and ensuring efficiency. And, I'm asking myself at the moment, how engaging is this for employees involved in these processes? How can they feel empowered and engaged to find the balance between understanding that we need standard processes and they have to follow processes and procedures, but also getting enough freedom and creativity in their roles? And although process efficiency is important, the relationships and keeping things personable play just as an important role. And in a company like Swarovski, where we're really consumer-centric, you want to mirror that internally in your organization. And you want to ensure personable touch points, and you need a personable culture to be mirrored internally. So I don't have the key to that yet, but it's something that's on my mind. Another challenge, I think, with companies that are going through these big transformations is that many of them are reducing management layers, meaning that a lot of managers now have larger teams and more direct reports. And I think that's a bit of a challenge, as younger generations want more of the employee of one. They want more of the individual attention, more career discussions, more attention more from the manager, more coaching. And I speak to leaders and I speak to managers, and I hear that this is really becoming quite a challenge, to have a bigger team and yet more demanding, let's say, millennials and Gen Z that want more from their managers.
Okay, well, definitely a lot of challenges, lots of change coming in. There's a generational change. There are, as you said, the different channels which are communicated, but that's some really, really useful, valuable input. Thank you, Anna, for your time.
Thank you, Eric.
And looking forward to seeing you the next time I'm over there.
I look forward to. I think you're coming sometime in autumn, so I look forward to seeing you then, Eric.